ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and fellow maritime professionals. Welcome to Sierra Space 2025 Conference. It is an honor to introduce the panelists for our first session, Ready Our Platforms. As we gather here today, we should focus on the mission of the United States Navy, to deter aggression, and when called upon, to fight and win. Ready platforms, fully mission capable, at the point of need, are the best deterrent to conflict. The officers here today are charged with achieving and sustaining an 80% combat surge ready posture for our ships, submarines, and aircraft by the year 2025. This North Star shows the Navy's commitment to ensuring that our forces are prepared to meet the challenges of the global security environment. This challenge requires innovative approaches to get platforms in and out of maintenance on time, and novel approaches to training, manning, modernization, production, and sustainment. By doing so, we can ensure that we are not only ready, but also agile and capable of deploying surge assets when called upon. Moderating our panel today is Admiral Jim Kilby, the Acting Chief of Naval Operations. Admiral Kilby brings a depth of experience to this panel and is charged with achieving this goal. Joining Admiral Kilby today are the following officers: Vice Admiral Carl Chebi, Commander of the Naval Air Systems Command, who oversees the development and sustainment of our naval aviation platforms. Admiral Daniel Cheever, Commander of Naval Air Forces and Naval Air Forces U.S. Pacific Fleet, who is responsible for ensuring our Naval Air Forces are ready to meet any challenge. Vice Admiral James Downey, Commander of the Naval Sea Systems Command, who leads the charge in delivering and maintaining our surface fleet capabilities. Vice Admiral Rob Gaucher, Commander of Naval Submarine Forces in the Submarine Force U.S. Atlantic Fleet, as well as the Allied Submarine Command, who ensures our undersea capabilities remain unmatched. Vice Admiral Brendan McLane, Commander of Naval Surface Forces and the Naval Surface Forces Pacific Fleet, who is dedicated to maintaining the readiness and effectiveness of our surface fleet. Together, these leaders represent the collective expertise and commitment of the United States Navy to ensure our platforms are ready, modern, and capable of meeting the demands of today and tomorrow. Please join me in welcoming Admiral Kilby and our esteemed panelists as we delve into the strategies and innovations that will help us keep our platforms ready. Thank you.
Hey, well, good morning, and thanks for being here today and joining us for this panel. Our Navy, your Navy, is focused on increasing lethality and readiness by 2027. A ready Navy provides deterrence. A ready Navy is ready for action if called. We are driving on 7 targets to achieve a ready Navy. And the first target, as we discussed already, is ready platforms, and it is the genesis of the term combat surge ready and the goal that we're going to talk about today. As the former Deputy Fleet Forces Commander, I am all about more ships, more aircraft, and more submarines ready for employment. At Fleet Forces, and I see my battle buddy there in the audience, Doug Verissimo, anytime we had to surge ships, we owed answers. Which ships? Where are the munitions coming from? How is the manning? 80% combat surge ready is a measurable goal to align expectations and standards and answers to these questions across the Navy. 80% is an ambitious goal, but ambition is necessary to force change. Timid goals allow us to claim success without a deep understanding of the system. If I say my goal is to improve a few percentage points, I can probably tweak the system around the edges and get there. But if I say my goal is to get from 63% to 80%, I have to really understand the system. I have to understand where the bottlenecks are. where the opportunity lies. And in order to achieve this magnitude of change, I will likely have to put the rudder over hard. We are increasing the combat surge readiness of our platforms by reducing maintenance delays, challenging approaches to manning, training, and modernization and sustainment. We've had success with this methodology. It began in 2018 by improving the operational availability of our tactical aircraft. We were stuck at 250 jets for over a decade, even as the inventory climbed from the 300s to the 500s. By thinking, acting, and operating differently, we decreased maintenance element turnaround time by 59%. We reduced operational maintenance hours by 30%. An inspection that used to take 14 days was reduced to 3 days. Our supply community was measuring success in number of parts shipped. Real success is more ready aircraft. We all need to understand the goal, we need to understand our role in achieving it, and we must understand the standard and how our actual performance measures against it. We achieved our goal of 341 aircraft a year after we started, and have sustained that for 6 years. I am proud of that achievement. We have scaled our efforts across all aviation platforms and are pushing forward into surface and submarine communities. CSR is a level of capability for air, surface, and submarine platforms to execute combat missions. It is distinct from global force management, which provides forces in response to the combatant commander demand balanced with available supply. It's not a substitute for the optimized fleet response plan. It is in addition to it. Combat Surge Ready certified units meet a minimum condition requirement for material condition, training, manning, and munitions. The type commanders seated with me today are designated as the single accountable officer to ensure their respective forces achieve 80% CSR. I chair a regular forum with all of them called Perform the Plan, designed to get after these goals. Their accountability, along with reforms, has resulted in fleet-wide cultural shift to aggressively prioritizing readiness. We have the TICOMs and the SysComs here, so I'd like to take an enterprise approach for how we are discussing getting after these goals. Air Boss and Vice Admiral Chebi, please walk us through the aviation journey in achieving the 80% combat surge ready goal, including lessons that we have scaled into across all type model series. We'll start with the Air Boss first, and then we'll go to Admiral Chebi. Air Boss.
Thanks, Admiral. It's great to be here at CMdr. Thanks to everybody who set this up and who's participating. The Combat Surge Ready journey started in about 2018 when Secretary Mattis challenged everybody to get 80% mission capable rates. That's when we set the target for 341. Prior to that point, our self-talk was that we could take 250-ish aircraft and make them into 341 aircraft quickly. The truth is it took well over a year to get there, and now to sustain it takes an all-hands effort all the time with the Naval Aviation Enterprise, OpNav, SecNav staff, the whole team. It's pretty exciting. We've scaled it into 22 type model series. And probably one of the best things that's happened during this journey is we truly partner with industry to share our truth, to have some real pointed discussions, but have them in on every discussion we have on the iterative process that we have. So we don't have a lot of government-only meetings anymore. We have a lot of industry-informed meetings, and we hold each other accountable, and they're helping us pull a lot of things left and recover as fast as possible when there's issues that pop up. And it's an exciting journey. The Combat Surge Ready is really so that if we go to war, we have everything we need to go to war right away, and it doesn't impact training or production of anything else that's going on. And that's where we are. We've teamed with Jebs, who'll tell you more about the NAVAIR piece of this, but he's been the stalwart of our journey to perform the plan, the Naval Sustainment System Aviation, and to really get that across the board, across all of our platforms. sort of the forcing function. And now we're sustaining everything that he's done and the acting Chief of Naval Operations has done to get us here. It is pretty exciting. With that said, there's more to it, but I think that covers it. I will say that we're teaming with VAdm Downey for our aircraft carriers, to get our aircraft carriers done with maintenance on time and quickly out there so we have them. With that said, in 2024, we deployed 7 of the 11 aircraft carriers, one that went twice in 2024. So we're seeing the fruits of this labor, and we're seeing a ready force, and with that said, I'll pass it down to Jess.
Thanks, Air Boss. Good to see many folks here. I can see with these lights right now. A couple years ago, if you heard me talk, my mom asked me, what does NAVAIR do? And it's a great question. And I answered back to her, we are in the business of naval aviation. And our business is to deliver the warfighting capability that a fleet needs at a cost we can afford. To run that business, you need to know our numbers. And I'll walk you through our journey and how we're running a better business today across all 5 of our North Stars. We have a North Star for availability. BCNO and Air Boss kind of mentioned, we started with F-18s, we figured out how to improve the outcomes, and then we've taken that playbook and scaled it across all of our other TMSs. We've taken that same playbook and applied it to affordability. How do we more effectively apply the resources that we have so we can achieve the outcomes that the fleet needs from us and run a better business, and we can walk you through that. Capability is the next one we're applying this playbook to as well. How to deliver the warfighting capability that we have on contract with industry on time meeting performance requirements. This has been a challenge so far. We continue to work with industry, that partnership with industry, setting those North Stars based on our current performance, putting a plan together with metrics and holding ourselves accountable outcomes. It works. I've seen it work too many times, time and time again. We're also applying those same practices to safety. If you look at our safety record from an aviation perspective, I wouldn't call it, we're not getting worse, but we've just been stagnant. So how do we apply the best practices that we have that learned through NSS P2P that we apply to F-18 readiness to safety? The same tenets, the same core principles there. Set a North Star based on your current performance with data, understand the leverage points, put a plan in place with metrics, and then hold ourselves accountable to outcomes. And the last one is training. We're developing and fielding tremendous capability out to the fleet. How do we ensure the air crew can achieve and maintain a proficiency level to fight at the high-end fight here? So we've got a great path forward for that one as well. Keys to success, from my perspective, leadership must be involved. What we're talking about up here, this is, we understand these details. We have got to understand. This is not something that we delegate. I think we get the same thing from industry here. This is a team sport. This is not something that the government can do alone. We need military, our CSS contractors, and our industry partners all along for this ride on the field, focused on that outcome so we deliver the warfighting capability the fleet needs when they need it. Focus on data versus stories. And then one of the things that we struggle with as an enterprise is having hard discussions. It's good to have hard discussions so we can understand the root cause of our current performance and then improve from there. With that, look forward to your questions.
Hey, Cheds, thank you, Andrew. We're going to go to surface ships now. So we'll ask Admiral McLane, the SWO boss, to start and be followed by VAdm Downey. But he and I also worked in our last lives when I was a Deputy Fleet Forces Commander. We had a standing meeting at 1300 every Tuesday where we talked about his ships. So I've watched Brendan grasp what's happening to his ships and understanding perhaps potential for different approaches, different ways to attack the problem, and partnering with VAdm Downey to do that. So Brendan, if you could start and talk a little bit about what you've learned, and then Jim, what you've learned on your side, that would be great.
I would say to start off, I owe a great deal to the Naval Aviation enterprise because when I started, I looked at, well, what are you doing to get this? And the idea of the Readiness Operations Center was one that I looked at and thought we could do this too. Now, we would have to do it a different way. The complexity is different. So we launched this, and we had a parallel approach. My predecessor at Surgepac, Admiral Kitchener, we did this in parallel. So we stood up these readiness operations centers to focus and concentrate on CASREC burn down. And after doing this now for 3 years, and we're still at it, Nimitz just left, and we worked hard at getting her out the door. But I realized when we really started unpacking what we were learning based on data was we're getting better at something that we're already pretty good at. I mean, just because we stood up a rock was not the first time we really concentrate on CASREC burn down to get a strike group out the door. The real and true improvement is getting maintenance availabilities finished on time. You'll remember our Tuesday meetings to go over that, and what you just said, Chev, really resonates with me was focus on data, not stories. Because when the veil starts going off track, it's usually a story that you get. Partnering with Admiral Downey, focusing on the two big pillars on how we can improve planning and execution of our maintenance availabilities. The first thing that we did was try to simplify the problem. Maintenance availabilities are incredibly complex. The larger the ship, the more complex it is. Our project managers are faced with multiple references for planning milestones, working together. NAVSEA was able to condense those down to one reference, down from 5 late last year. It was a big accomplishment. The other thing when it comes to planning is at the 6 month out before the avail starts, Admiral Downey and I sit down and look at each avail. We stack hands on it. Lots of goodness comes out of probing questions get asked about what the planning is. We're now tracking our port engineer and project managers' experience and expertise who are assigned to avail, so you can kind of see the complexity of avail. Is the education experience right on both sides? And then finally, the last part on simplifying the problem when it comes to planning is in our task group Greyhound experience, we learned 100-day avails, those finish on time 100%. So a shorter avail is simpler just by design. So we're going to combine that with reducing the periodicity or increasing the periodicity of our docking from 9 years to 6 years. Again, another simplification. If you're doing it more frequently, you're going to get more maintenance done, and the packages themselves will be shorter, and we have a greater chance of finishing on time, which is the key performance indicator. And then on the execution side, the investment that we made in standing up our surface groups, we learned that as much as we try to manage at the TICOM level, getting down to the deck plates from the TICOM and get the hands-on for each avail is impossible. But standing up surf crews where we have an organization that is just focused on maintenance and training, only those two things, we have a much greater chance of finishing those avails on time, because this organization that is hands-on, they'll be able to, they've been running now for a year, learn from mistakes and apply them to the next. And to have the right personnel to do that, time and again when we would hear the stories of why the avail went sideways, I kept thinking, I wish I had an engineering lead. Weapons tactics instructors, the investment that we made with them over a decade ago is paying off in the Red Sea right now. So we started that late last year, advanced engineering instructors, think engineering Witties, first class graduated in December. These are going to be experts in the fields of maintenance planning, gas turbines, diesels, and things like that are going to help us execute on time. And then the last part is partnering with industry, which we hear too. We can't do it by ourselves. I meet with industry on a weekly basis to talk about which avails are not going well. And the path that my predecessor, Admiral Kitchener, started with our North Star of 75 mission capable ships has segued very well into our 80% combat search ready goal. All the things that we've learned over the last 2 years, we've been able to apply now and really focus in our performance and plan efforts. And the last part, getting to 80% combat search ready, gigantic goal, but the foundation of that is our ships have to also be at maximum redundancy. We've learned that from fighting in the Red Sea now for the last 18 months. We have 31 combat critical systems. We also think of them as 31 suite systems, but those have to be operating, and the spare parts for those systems have to be in the storeroom of that ship.
Right, thanks. A lot to pull on here in this panel. A lot of lessons we've shared. Your guidance to your CEOs about what they must do, versus what they could do, was critical, I think, because we're trying to narrow that possible variance you would get from performance, and you wanted to get them kicked off on the right step. And Jim, what would you say from the NSA perspective?
Thanks, Vice. Good morning, everybody. Quite the standing room in the back. Just like church or school, there's a whole bunch of seats up front. Similar to how Admiral Chebi described McLane, I'll do a little bit on NAVSEA and get into what are we doing on surface ships. So we've restructured NAVSEA over the last year into 5 lines of effort. Line of effort 1 is force generation, new capabilities. So I'll share with you there, while we all have a lot of challenges and performance improvement plans, the team delivered 12 new warships last year, twice the average of the prior 5 years. So really a significant effort there. A lot of that was achieved via having clean trials. Very, very few overall trial cards and very few start cards. We have 92 ships in construction and 92 under contract and 56 actually in construction. And I bring that up because we need more ships in the mix to hit the combat surge ready numbers overall. Significant improvement in surface maintenance last year and a ways to go, as well as thousands of tech assists and flyaway teams out to the Red Sea and other areas. As Brendan hit it, we've really been very focused on the planning milestones and following our process. Sometimes the teams get a bit overwhelmed, sometimes schedules change, but if we follow those processes, start planning 3 years ahead, start getting material 2 years ahead, lock the package 1 year ahead, and do the executability assessments, we have a much greater chance of ships going on time. Get the contracts awarded. We've been at close to or within or a little bit beyond A-120. We need to move some of that back even further to the left, especially for our amphibs. We continue to see good progress in deck plate approval of change and not having that tied up with the contracting officer in our private yards. A real key issue here, though, especially on the amphib side, is to get our open-end specs done to a high degree before the avail even starts. We have America coming back for Naval later this year, and as the SWO boss and I reviewed it in the fall, it was an approach of this is a really large package. One approach would be de-scope it and go with what you can achieve. But the end result of that is you're going to have unplanned work that you're going to experience in the avail. Overall, 191 open-ended specs, and the team is on track to get those done ahead of her coming back to CONUS for her availability. So really pretty significant effort there. The other one mentioned is Task Group Greyhound, getting our destroyers down in the 100-day category. 9 of the last 10 have gone on time or early. And as we look between 100 days and 150 days, you could get the vast majority of the modernizations done out towards that 150 days as well. And then studying in the other commercial environments, how do they change their class maintenance plans as the ships age? So that gets us to potential adjustments in our DDG class of moving docking from 9 years to 6 years and overall shorter periods there. A key as we move out of readiness generation into data is we have done thousands of these evolutions, and we need to get into more predictive data to show us what the trends are going to be, and we greatly welcome any support there. The last 2 items, get back to some of the surface, is our people, our line of effort 4. We're a large organization, hired over 7,000 people last year, all people we wanted to hire, want to retain. So we're very, very focused on that, as well as incentives to contracting officers to get more work done in shorter time, as well as incentives out to our project suits and the training that is required to keep the business going and improve. And the last area I'll hit on is our infrastructure. We have, the team has completed 40 of the SIOP projects, and right now has over $6 billion of work going on. That's also included wellness centers at our shipyards, improved Wi-Fi for the workforce, and some more mobile computing out there in that environment. So with that, sir, I'll turn it back.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Don't get too comfortable. We're going to go to submarine maintenance now. It has a huge focus for me. When I can prime myself, when I can be in charge of my own schedule, I like to spend 1,300 every Thursday with Jim Downey and Rob Gaucher as we talk about that problem. The vast majority of our submarine maintenance is done in our public shipyards. So Rob Gaucher, the sub-floor commander, I like to call him the underlord, he will commence to talk about this very difficult problem, and then we'll toss it to Jim Downey, and then we'll go to a few questions and then open it up. So Rob.
Okay, thanks, Vice Chief. Yeah, so in the submarine force, as I look at combat surge ready, there's really two pieces to it. So part one is I've got to get the submarines out of the shipyard and delivered to me so I can operate them in the fleet, put them into the fleet response training plan. And then I've got to make them ready for combat, so I've got to get them properly man-trained and equipped to go do their mission. So right now, the challenge is that the Vice Chief is grading me against both. And so Jim and I are joined at the hip to get after what is really my pacing problem, which is getting the submarines out of the shipyard. And the capacity in our public shipyards right now is 10 fast attack submarines. We have 17 fast attack submarines in the public shipyard. So crushing that delta down to 10 is really what's going to let me drive my combat surge ready to 80%. So that's the big problem we're working on. All the things that Jim just discussed in surface are common to submarines. So we've got to get to the places that we can't normally see and find out if there's more problems than we expected, which is the growth work piece, very early. So that's critical. We've got to minimize the work packet size. So I have a piece of that. So I have to really minimize the good ideas, really after about 2 years. And when I get 2 years out from start, we're kind of at slap the table on the packet size. I mean, we maybe can give a little bit beyond that, but at that point we got to stop the good ideas. I've got to give him a stable plan. So even if something breaks, and things will break in the 2 years I'm operating that submarine because I run it really hard, I've just got to be smart and say, does it absolutely positively have to be done in a C&O availability, or could I accept a little bit of risk there, get it out and fix it in a fleet availability where it's a little bit easier to get some maintenance done just because some of the controls we have to put in place. And I do have to get it done safely at the same time. And then the other piece I own relative to that is making sure that as we go into a shipyard availability, that the crew of the ship are ready. So I have to do all the testing, and I have to make sure that it's not the crew that's holding things up. So that's my TICOM piece of that that contributes to making sure that when I turn it over to Jim, he can get it in and get it out on plan. Now, once I get them, the other piece of combat surge ready is I have to get them properly man-trained and equipped to operate. So we look at what we call the PESTO pillars. So there's 5. So the P is the people. So I have to make sure that I can man 3 sections of watch on every submarine, so that if they are called to go respond to INDOPACOM or EUCOM or CENTCOM anywhere in the world, that I've got enough to stand the watch and operate for months at a time. The next thing is equipment. So we're actually doing pretty well in our intermediate maintenance availabilities, which is once I get them to the pier and the waterfront, being able to turn them around on time. But the key there is a much smaller scale of maintenance and a much shorter duration. And I think Jim will quickly tell you that the shorter we can make availabilities, the more likely we are to deliver on time. So we've done pretty well there, and we're able to repair those ships and get them back out. The S pillar is supply, so I've got to have the right number of parts, and I got to make sure I get enough food on board to sustain them so they can go out and operate again for months at a time. Training, we tie all that to our TICOM readiness evaluation, so we basically put our ships, our submarines out for basically a mini war to make sure that wherever I send them in the world, we've tested them, that they're following all of our tactics so they can survive in combat. And it's a pretty sporty evaluation. Oftentimes we'll go down to one of our torpedo ranges and we'll actually shoot exercise torpedoes. We also use our high fidelity trainers in port so that we can actually dial the stress up quite a bit, things we can't do at sea because of safety, but we can really run through the paces and test in a high contact environment. So that's the training piece. And then finally, there's the ordnance. So I have to make sure that I have enough torpedoes and Tomahawk cruise missiles on board each of our submarines. And a little bit of a good news story on torpedoes. We've been really driving, what the Vice Chief talks about, we're performing the plan and we'll get better in our torpedo inventories. And we've driven that up over the last 6 months. So I actually raised the number in the Atlantic Fleet by 2 torpedoes across the board because, and really thanks to industry there for working with us on that, we've been able to get our torpedo inventories up, and I expect in the next 6 months to raise it again another 2 torpedoes, which drive us closer to being more ready for the call if Admiral Paro tells us he needs us. So we have to manage those. Pesto pillars is the second part once they turn over to me to be able to get to that 80% combat surge rate.
Hey, Rob, thanks, Jim.
Thanks, sir. Just hitting on a couple of Rob's themes and a couple additional items. I'll go to planning and execution. Again, in planning, we saw, and we've been on this journey for several years now, in performance and plan. We saw several years ago that a significant amount of our material was being ordered after the start of availability. It wasn't a minor amount. It's double digits, it was closer to 50%, but it was a self-fulfilling prophecy here. It was, we're overrunning on labor, so we're spending the money on that in the execution year and not buying the material. With a lot of help from Congress and the submarine PEOs, we're able to get and the sponsors, a significant reset in some of that material in the $1.5 to $2 billion category. So we're making sure we have the material going forward, and that's the major material. In addition to that, over the last year, the team's been pouring through the related drawings and sees, of course, there's contingent material needed as well. So we've gone to the point now, recently, in the last 3 to 4 months, of codifying that we're just buying the contingent material. We're not going to wait to see the work stop and buy those extra bolts or whatever it may be. Just buy it out and manage it across the inventory. So two very logical issues, but with all the work going on, as Rob talks about, 17 in play, sometimes you've got to get right into those very specifics and do the elementary change. Another big challenge we have here that almost will never change is a significant operation cycle and much harder to access a submarine, of course, ahead of the avail. But we are doing all of those assessments that we can possibly get to, working with the crews, working with the tech commander. In execution, some of it's similar to the surface, some a little bit of difference. We get into some significant test interruptions. And what we have seen, one area of improvement is the team would walk the test line, review the procedure, start executing, and if they have a problem, they would go order material. We think we're on top of that. The other issue is they call the SME from somewhere, the subject matter expert, from somewhere around the world when they needed them, instead of just having them positioned, him or her position for that test evolution. So we have some improvements there. Duration is significant in execution. These are notionally closer to 2 years than 1 year. And when an avail goes longer than a year, regardless of the ship type, 4 times more likely to overrun. This is one we still have a lot of work to do on, in trying to understand Are there ways to break up some of this? We've had some great work with naval reactors and Sub-4 on doing some things in the water versus in dock, but some more efforts to work on there. Another change, just as you may have heard in the other discussion of the mock, we have shifted NAMC's Emergency Ops Center to an operations center. So we can see the material condition of the Navy off of common data sources now and share that across the CNO's data effort and manage those avails just as if it's a forward deployed ship with CAS reps. So significant opportunity there. Now, after working on this for a couple of years, I think we've made some significant progress this year. Carriers have had regional support contracts in place in addition to the naval shipyards for a long time. In Norfolk, in Mid-Atlantic and Southwest, and in Pac Northwest. We hadn't been doing that in the submarine area to help with balance the work and address surge with a contract support vehicle. So that RFP has gone out and that effort is being solicited this year. Those are some of the big ones we're working on.
Okay, a quick couple of questions to get folks warmed up, and then we'll switch to you. But you alluded to this, Chaz and Andra, a little bit about the maturity of the system, trying to stretch beyond 80% mission capable. Now it's 6 CVNs, 6 air wings. And then, Chaz, you alluded to some specific areas like safety, affordability, capability that were beyond the scope of the original journey. So can you just kind of update the team on where you are with industry, the conversation with industry, and what the next steps are to move forward? And I'll let you two kind of self-organize on how you want to answer that.
Sir, thanks for that question. Yeah, look, when we developed, we had an F-18 readiness recovery. I'll be blunt. Naval aviation was not a willing partner. We had to be told to do it. And then we were told to have a very aggressive target as well. And those two things forced us to think differently about the problem. You could not just optimize the process we had. We had to change some foundational things. But we developed that playbook. And that playbook works. I have just seen it work too many times across availability, so we've scaled this to all of our other TMSs. We still struggle with our joint programs, which is interesting because we don't own all the levers of the joint programs. So we still see challenges with our joint programs. From an affordability perspective, that same playbook works. You know, if you set the North Star target, based on your current performance, you understand your data, you put the plan together, and hold yourself, you have metrics so you can hold yourself accountable outcomes, it works. And we can apply it to safety and to training as well. The key finding for me is, and it's much more comfortable to talk about activity than it is about to talk about outcomes. Outcomes brings accountability. When you have accountability, if you're not going to meet your outcomes, it's a very difficult discussion to have. That's why I mentioned earlier, it's okay for us to have those hard discussions, even with industry. Many of you have been in meetings from industry with me. We have those tough discussions. And they're wonderful, because at that point, we understand what the root cause of our current performance is, we understand what our gap is, we can define a gap closure plan, who owns it, what metrics, and we can hold each other accountable towards that. So, again, the playbook works. It's just getting the culture inculcated across the enterprise for us to make this how we operate each and every single day. It's a journey that we're still on. Boss?
Yeah, and I think, to me, it's the 4 T's, right? You speak the truth, you gain the trust of each other to say those truths and to be direct about it without pulling punches. You have the transparency required to get after these issues, and then you have the teamwork that actually does it together. To me, those things are the most powerful and critical thing. The ownership piece of it cannot be overstated. That is absolutely critical. You've got to have an owner and an outcome, right? And you get the team together and you say, my role is basically the demanding customer. So for Jim and I, demanding that the shipyards produce in the timeline that they're supposed to produce for that availability. And that's what we're going after. And it's great. And I'm called the supported commander for a reason. And while it's a little uncomfortable every once in a while to be Echelon 3 commander and be the supported commander by Echelon 1, 2, what I found in this journey of problem solving is that they absolutely jump on board quickly and say, wait, that is ours, and what we do is know the system, know how to do it, and then we fix it ourselves within our resources and constraints. And if we can't, and absolutely can't, and know our business, then we elevate it. And that's when the leadership takes action, because they've seen that we've done all the homework. They've seen that we've run up something that we can't change ourselves. I will tell you that's very few and far between, things that we can't fix between the system's resources, our resources, and our ability within policy and change and thinking, acting and operating differently to get to solutions. And with industry, who's been very willing to partner and expedite and help us in all kinds of their supplier chains and pulling levers, it's pretty intense and awesome. The last thing I'll say is, because of this problem-solving journey that Naval Kilby has started us on and that we're all on, once you see it and do it in one thing, you can't unsee it, you can't not do it in other things. So across the pesto pillars that Rob talked about, we're doing a similar performance plan in each of those to make sure we understand the ordinance, where it goes, and how you get there, the training, live virtual constructed, net-enabled weapons encryption, the personnel, when does enlisted manning get healthy, and all those kind of things. So there's a lot to this, and pretty excited about the journey, especially being the supporting commander and the demanding customer of this. Thanks, sir.
Hey, Andrew, thanks. Just to highlight that point, you know, your predecessor twice removed, Kenny Whitesell, told us one, I think February, right before he retired, that he took his eye off the ball around the holiday season, and he watched readiness plummet to like 60% because he wasn't driving the machine. And so this can never go on automatic. You can never take your eye off the ball. You have to look at it every day. Daily visual management of your process is important. So I've watched the team do that, and I get a report every Thursday afternoon from the Aviation Enterprise, which tells me where we are on Type Model Series. But I'll tell you, one of the vexing problems that they're going to need help on is joint programs, because that falls beyond their control, beyond the Navy control. So, you know, Kilby, strap on your belt and walk down to the third deck and start talking to OSD A&S about how we can get our arms around that problem to achieve a different outcome. Let me just go to the surface community really quick, because amphib maintenance has been vexing us, me, and we had significant trouble with the Boxer arm and the Wasp arm last year. And I know Jim and Useful Boss have been focused on that. Can you give us a little insight what's happened in almost the last year and what you're doing about it? Let's start with Useful Boss.
Yes, sir. So we, to the point I made earlier, try to simplify the problem and give people more time for planning. Admiral Downey alluded to it. With these complex events for a big deck amphib, the lead maintenance activity is going to need some more time. The A-120 is not going to cut it. So what we're going to pilot this year is a signature avail. That's what we're calling them on the East Coast and West Coast, where we lock the package at A-500 and awarded A-360. That will give them a lot more time to plan. The other big point that we've learned is on the execution side, we had a big problem with QA. And this is to the point again, we heard a lot of stories about how each avail goes wrong, but one of the common denominators is when we got around to the QA part, we found that the work didn't pass and we needed to redo it, and that sometimes took months. Investing in the original equipment manufacturer and getting them to sign up for high pressure steam systems for some of the diesel work that we need, rather than leaving it to the lead maintenance activity to contract out to the lowest bidder, who's going to be the subcontractor. But putting that in, investing in the original equipment manufacturer will drive down the QA problem. Admiral Downey alluded to this as well, getting our long lead time material ordered way in advance so that we have got a spare knuckle crane or a Cali deck on the shelf, so we're ready to have a rotatable pool of these one-off systems that we have on our LPDs, and then it's really stocking up on diesel overhaul kits. And the final part, one of the things that we learned last year is the complexity of ordering material. Submarines and carriers, they have somebody on the maintenance team that's just dedicated to ordering material. For big deck anchors, we need to do the same thing. And then the final part, Admiral Downey talked about this too, the America Naval, getting to the left on opening its mouth. That requires a lot of complete partnership to invest time that the big deck was supposed to be doing something else, but getting them to realize we really need to do this if we want America back out on time in 26. We're going to need to invest the time now to look at what we have.
Hey, Brendan, thanks for doing anything to add?
Yeah, thanks. On the provisioning, what we found, an example is Gaucher, life of ship components that aren't, not a new ship, steering bearings fail, and as Swoboss was saying, we didn't keep that OEM going, but we did keep the shipyard going, the new construction yard. So with a closer partnering between in-service and new construction, we're able to divert some assets. We're able to get folks working both rudder systems in the water, nonstop 24/7 by some minor enabling of equipment for the team. I mentioned the O&Is, the open-ended specs. So how are you able to take a forward deployed ship that has ready for sea requirements and inspect 190 tanks ahead of the event? You got to pump them down, you got to gas free them, right? Not really. With some of the equipment we've worked on with NRL, we don't have to put people in the tanks to do some of this. So we're using some more new technology there. We also saw in the amphib assessment, project soups turning over quite a bit, and each one might be their first one. Really, really hard position to lead from. So we've looked at their qualifications as well as partnering with on what we're doing on the nuclear vessels, on incentives. And then on the signature of valves, what we're really talking there is move an award out closer to a year than 120 days. And how do we use a multi-year appropriation like we have in the OPN pilot to get after this work much earlier than we have. Those are some of the big things we're working on.
All right, thanks, Jim. Hey, last question for Rob and Jim is my view of watching this for a year. We could see ourselves having trouble to understand what was happening in the system at the normal Thursday afternoon meeting in our performance plants. Huge group of people, maybe 70 that are looking at that, all the shipyard CEOs and their staffs as we try to know our way through that problem. So we came up with a construct a little bit as a result of one of those meetings where we said, let's get a smaller group of people at the leadership level, me, you, and there's probably 12 people in the room, where we said, what are some big moves that only we can affect on the system to try to get a different outcome? And so, Rob, if you and Jim could just opine on that, not wrong, because we want to turn over the team. But to me, that was a little bit of a deviation, or in addition to our normal battle, because we just found that space is really challenging us, and we needed to kind of elevate it above. What's your view on that? And we still have ways to go here to kind of land this thing, but can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, sir. So first of all, thanks for that question, Vice Chief. So there's a number of these big moves. Just to give you a sense, we're looking at kind of the broad spectrum. So we're looking at how do we hire faster? Jim already mentioned, how do we incentivize? How do we outsource more of the work from the shipyards to balance out that capacity problem? We're looking at command and control. We're looking at how we take an operations center approach to things. And we're looking at material, among other things. But let me kind of tie it together for you. So we execute this P2P process, or perform the plan, where we look at what the drivers are to a plan not working, or a plan working, depending on how you look at it. And so one of the areas we found that is not going well is work stoppage. And it makes a lot of sense, right? If you're stopping the work, you're not getting it done, so you're not going to finish. So you're not rocket science there. So we identified that as an area that's not going very well. And so we said, why is that? And we figured out there's two big reasons why a job stops. And Jim's talked about one already, parts, right? So we get to a point and we're stuck because we don't have all the parts we need. So the big move there is, let's go figure out how to buy contingent material for all the jobs we might need to do. So we, around the turn of the century, we got very efficient, and we went into this, just-in-time inventory management. So kind of learning some lessons from inventory. It hasn't really worked well for us in the unplanned work area. So we're now taking a just-in-case mentality to this, so that when we open up the tank or the valve and we find out there's something we didn't predict, we've already got the part ready for it. So that's a big driver for us. And so we're taking that on in this small group. Okay, how do we close on that to make sure that we don't just talk about it, we actually demonstrate it? We've picked 3 availabilities that we're driving to get 100% of the contingent material there for. I mean, whether we hit 100% or not, to be seen, but we're going to get darn close. The second reason a job stops is because of technical resolution. So I get stuck, I'm not sure what to do next. It wasn't something I expected. Now I got to have an engineer look at it. And so, there's a lot of reasons we need those same engineers, and in particular, structural engineers. And structural engineers don't come from colleges. We take electrical and mechanical, naval architects, and then we train them over 1 to 2 years at a shipyard to be a structural engineer. So that's a hard problem to get after. So we've taken that problem on to go increase our total number of structural engineers so that we can resolve these problems faster. And if you look at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, who's doing really well, they have 25 engineers on a project, so that when the worker runs into a problem, they're not filling forms out and waiting for it to get resolved. They're just picking a phone up and saying, hey, I'm stuck on this, what do I do? And it turns out that a large portion of the time, that engineer just can tell them what to do, and they're right back to work. So we're trying to drive those numbers down. And I think it's safe to say that really over about the last 8 months, I think we've cut the total number of jobs in stop work in half, and we've cut the average duration down by about 5 or 6 days. So we're seeing the progress. What we haven't seen yet is the availabilities start to crush down and come out on plan. But we think if we keep this press on, that's the ultimate result that we're going to see. It's just working its way through it. And with that, Jim, that's a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'll hit 3 others. Lines of effort of the yards, command and control of the yards, and the teaming on the avails. Some of the Puget in Norfolk are enormous. They range from 10 to 15,000 folks. Norfolk has 16 lines of effort. When you reflect on ships, you got LA, Virginia, Ohio, Memphis, Ford. There's 11 more lines of effort than that at that shipyard. We've been successful in moving 2, whether they run the base or whether they run a foundry up in Philadelphia. But there's significant focus there on who should be overseeing what work. And then the C2 of the yards. How do we focus the leadership correctly on driving those various lines of effort, whether it be submarine or carrier, nuclear, of course, stays in a very controlled structure. But in some cases, you'll have high-level work, intermediate level maintenance work come in and disrupt the D-level work, the depot level. So we're focused on how do we affect that and make sure we have a dedicated, accountable workforce to turn the subs around at the D level and separate out some folks on I level. And the last one I'll add is on carriers. Carrier G1 has been pretty successful over the years. It's industry and government. It is not just the naval shipyard. And they take the lessons learned of the avails of certain alterations and certain maintenance packages, and they share it across the team. That's one item. The other one is, and the team stays the same through planning and execution on the Navy side. We stood down Sub-Team 1 a couple years ago for other reasons, and we've recharted that now. So that is reforming, and we're looking at it. The avails are different, right? Ironically, what is our shortest average avails? Our largest vessels, 6 months and 16 months for carriers, right? That's something to ponder out there. When you have a 2-year avail, it's a little harder, and you have planning 2 years before that. It's a little harder to keep that team together for sub after sub after sub. So we're working through that, but focusing the lines of effort on the depot and high level, who and how are we running the order, and how are we getting the lessons learned applied. Those are the more enduring items we're working on.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the team just to give you the stats of where we are, though. We're at 67% combat surge ready for submarines today. We're at 68% combat surge ready for surface ships today. We're at 70% combat surge ready for CDNs and air wings. So we need to get a little bit uncomfortable here to have a process change to result in a different outcome, and that's the benefit of the stretch goal. In addition to that, it provides more platforms for our fleet commanders to do what they needed to do what they need to do when charged. So with that, I'll open it up to the floor for questions, and I think we're going to get some from the left-hand side of the room over here. Over.
Our first question this morning. As you look forward to the mid-2030s, what trade-offs do you see coming that may become more challenging due to the current focus on maintaining 80% combat surge ready status?
I don't know that I see a challenge. I think we're going to do our business better. Let me break to the systems command commanders to see if they have a different view. I think we have flex in the system that we've allowed ourselves to grow accustomed to. I think running a tighter business will be better for us in the long run, but there may be some things I haven't seen. I will make a comment. OPNA, if Roy Kitcher's in the room, he started ringing this bell years ago, and we're just now reacting to that bell and getting the funding where it needs to be to buy those spares to maintain them. So to me, that's a more efficient system running. But how about you, Jim and Chebs? Do you have a view that's different?
Yeah, not different, some other attributes though. Hiring. Okay, as we look at new construction and in-service, our projections are pipe fitting, metalworks, etc., electricians. We have to hire almost 200,000 people over the next 8 to 10 years. Big challenge. We can have a wages discussion there and a retention discussion. But that's one of our biggest. We have not, the attrition rates have not subsided, right? In many cases, they're more than double that they were before COVID. So through 2019, more so 10%. Some of our big yards, 20% plus. I'm referencing mainly the private yards. So that area is critical. To affect that, we, in the 80s, 4 to 5 times minimum wage for these jobs, and today about 1.5 times minimum wage. So we need to work together on how we can positively affect that while business flourishes. The next one is lead time. We have seen about half of the material of the long lead Rob was mentioning takes about half as long. So 2 years is about 3 years. While we had been doing some minimum sustaining buys, Congress has helped us with that, with 3 years of advanced procurements. But there's still a lot of work to do there, and the Maritime Industrial Base is working on that. And all those areas affect in-service and new construction. New construction, I think you can read the various reports and you see where we are. Some areas have stabilized to program predicted schedules, not the contract predicted schedules, and some of those are running 2 to 3 years late. We've got to drive that down significantly as we get into the 2030s to have the right number of ships in the mix to hit the combat surge ready numbers.
Are you good, Judge?
Yes, Judge, the only thing I would add is, I don't think it's a trade-off. I would call it more of a balance. If I look at the cost structure of all of our programs, around 5 to 10% from the development, around 15 to 20 for the production, and for the rest of it, 60, 70% is in sustainment. So how do you sustain your current force while developing and building the next generation of force? I mean, there must be a balance. The best example I can give you right now, something we're dealing with, we have an aging E6 fleet, and we have an E130 on contract. So how do I make sure we deliver E130 on time while we sustain the E6 platform? I don't think it's a trade-off, it's a balance. We must do both. Really need help from industry here, especially on the particular delivery of that new platform here. And that can expand to many different platforms, but that's a good example.
Hey, just another shameless bragging on the aviation enterprise. You know, this drive for affordability. You talk about behavior, and I've watched a lot of human behavior in the Pentagon. Behavior is to hold up with what you've got and not to expose yourself because someone might take your money. I hate to be that brutal about it, but that's it. And the aviation enterprise has figured out a way to change the culture with the agreement that they'll keep their savings and be able to reinvest them. And that was largely started by Admiral Lesher, who happens to be an aviator. And so when I came into the Vice Chief's office, Chebs made this speech to me and he said, I would like to film you committing to returning the savings to us. Now, I'm not sure what that says about me, but I did it. And he's managed to save a ton of money over time and reinvest it, where he's reduced the fear that you're going to take my money and apply it to someone else, and they get to reapply it to things that they think are important and know they're important to do, and that's happening. So to me, I'm trying to replicate that across 20 other communities to follow that suit. So thank you for that, Chebs. Next question.
How will the Navy continue to conduct much-needed maintenance while ensuring 80% combat surge readiness?
Well, let's go back to the premise here. It is a great question, but if I can get my avails done on time, if I can load those ships, if I can get the man with the sailors, that ship is just available earlier to do other things, whether it be respond to out-of-area deployers or be used in a surge capacity. You know, when VA and I did this, we had the reaction to the Ukraine invasion, and we were told to come up with 6 ships. So we looked for the next 6 ships, and we looked to see if we had ammo and could we get them out there. I remember when we sent those ships across, we looked at each other like, where's the next 6 ships? And we were having trouble identifying. So the idea that you formalize this and understand that condition and pull it to the left, vice waiting for it to all culminate in advanced training or Comm2X is what we're talking about. So it doesn't mean we're going to change OFRP. We're not. We're going to still do Comm2X because that is the premier, unequaled in this world force generation process to create a naval force to deploy. We're just going to identify those ships earlier for use if needed. We may not have to use them, but they'll still be available and ready to go. That's the benefit of it. So I think it requires that discipline to get those ships done on time, and I commend the Surface Committee because they've doubled their on-time completion from 2023 to 2024, and we want to continue to pressurize that. Do you have an addition to that, Bernie?
You really covered it pretty well, Admiral Kilby, but the other things that I would add is to get to 80% combat surge rate, it's the counterintuitive. We're going to actually have to do more maintenance, but we're going to have to do it in a more predictable way, shorter time spans, shorter avails, more frequently. So it is going to be an investment. It is going to be more expensive, but with an average age of the fleet that is increasing, it's wise to do that.
Well, we may have to say no, and I hate to say this because the fleet commanders won't want to hear that, and they'll probably castigate me after this. But we found over time that in order to maintain your spy radar, you have to do your maintenance. That hasn't always been our behavior, especially initially when we introduced Aegis to the fleet, when we kept the radar up and we didn't want to take it down because something bad might happen. You must maintain your radar if it is to perform when you need it to perform. You have to do effective transfer of power, you have to do isolation, you have to understand the conditions of that system. Those are all the tenets we're talking about here. Let's next question, if you don't mind, sir. Just come on in.
A couple more items. I won't get to planning or the shorter again, but additive manufacturing and additional parts and sources for parts, really, really important. The MIB is working on that. We are working an acquisition strategy update to put in place this year to acquire services for special systems that have a diminishing subject matter experts. Steam, diesels, cranes, davits, and we're working on a significant effort to reduce our specifications. My chief engineer is going through his 5,300 specifications. It's about 75% through those, and we see wherever we can, and it's applicable, we're shifted to a commercial version of those. Some of the things that GAO has referenced as well in the past.
Thanks, Jim. All right, next question.
Ladies and gentlemen, this will be the last question for this morning's panel. You've emphasized the importance of investing in your people to ensure fleet readiness. Can you share more about the specific types of investments the Navy is making to prepare sailors both mentally and physically for the challenges ahead?
Well, I've got an idea here, but I don't want to stunt growth. Any questions from any enterprise for their specific repair work?
One of the things that we learn when it comes to training is that the best training we do on ships is in teams. Damage control, combat systems, those are all team sports for us. And we were taking full advantage of that as we were going through the basic and advanced phase, getting ready for deployment. Our habit had been, in order to get the crew topped off with peak manning, would be to add the people right before the deployment. And then we realized, well, we do need to get them for the cup too, so we backed it up to that. But to get the Line Navy HR system, as great as they are, to make that shift was considerable. But what we learned is to get full advantage of the basic phase, we need peak personnel at the beginning of the basic phase. So we had to get the Line Navy HR system to pull even further left. We're going to be able to do that for the first time with our next West Coast Strike. They're going to be peak personnel at the beginning of basic phase to take full advantage of all the team training that we're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. Anyone else? Andre, and then we'll go to you, Rob.
Yeah, I look at the sailors today, and they think and operate quickly. They learn fast. We need to change our training so that they learn fast and it's world-class training across the board. I've seen what's happening in industry with AR goggles and things like that that can really speed up learning and how you do maintenance. And then it gets all the way to corrosion control, cannibalization, the rest of how we do maintenance. And they're excited when they're getting delivered world-class training. And that's what we're going after, is world-class training, because that's what motivates sailors. And I think the indirect benefit of that is you will retain a ton more sailors when they're motivated and being trained to the highest degree, and now they are truly experts and expert warriors at their maintenance mission.
Thanks, Andre. Rob.
So kind of along the same theme that Andre's talking about, the quality of our trainers in the last 3 decades has really gone up significantly. So one of the things we realized is that we hadn't really changed our qualification process on board as a result of that. So we started an initiative about 1.5 years ago called the Day One Ready Sailor. And the challenge was to our schoolhouse to deliver a sailor in certain skill sets that is ready to step aboard, do 1 under instruction watch and 1 interview, and then start standing watch, so that we get them part of the team contributing, pretty much on day 1. So we've started that plan out with a couple of basic sonar operators 1 and electronic plots operators the other. So very, kind of simplistic watches. But we're now going to double that this year, and we're adding as we get feedback from the fleet, so that we're instantly getting those sailors ready. And they're really delivering. It's been great feedback from the fleet. It helps our watch bill. It contributes to our combat surge readiness. So that's been a big deal for us. Now, the part I worry about is as we have these extended availabilities, particularly as we thought we're going to get out on one date and then we extend a few months at a time, and so it kind of hamstrings us, is how do we really commit to our sailors who aren't at sea to make sure they're getting at-sea experience? So as our deployed submarines come back, the last slide they show me as they brief is how many other submarine sailors they took to sea and got them qualified. And so that's something that, as a force, we're committed to. And, the Vice Chief has challenged us that, every first-term sailor has the opportunity to go to sea. And so, we're really working hard to make sure that we meet those marks and we get that at-sea experience for each one of our sailors.
And one addition is I'm committed to working with the type commanders and the systems commanders at our seashore rotation. Because I'm not sure we got that exactly right. People can gain expertise at shore, which then can be applied to the sea. So I want to go back and look and make sure we didn't short sheet ourselves there in an effort to address a manning problem. We may have had a second tier or third tier effect on that. So that's an area of growth work that we need to do to make sure we're building really world-class journeymen and masters. So thank you for that. And thank you for the ability to address you today on what we're undertaking. We've unveiled this publicly now, so I'm sure you will hold us accountable as you should. We will hold ourselves accountable, but I'm committed to getting more ready platforms available for our fleet commanders. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Our next session